In a small town, tucked away between rolling hills, lived a young man named Eli. The town was peaceful, its streets lined with cobblestone and shaded by large oak trees. On the surface, it seemed like the perfect place to settle and build a life. Yet, beneath the calm exterior, Eli struggled with a sense of emptiness that he couldn't shake. He worked long hours in a small workshop as a carpenter, crafting furniture for the townsfolk. His hands were skilled, and his work was appreciated, but he couldn't help but feel that something was missing. He longed for a deeper sense of purpose, but with each passing day, he found himself sinking further into doubt. Eli's life, despite being full of routine and productivity, felt devoid of passion. Every day was the same: rise, work, return home to a quiet house, and sleep, only to repeat it all over again. He wanted to be more than a craftsman. He wanted to create something that would last, something that would make a difference. But he lacked the confidence to take the risks needed to achieve his dreams. Self-doubt consumed him, and the fear of failure kept him from trying anything new. His friends and family often encouraged him to take a leap of faith, but Eli was hesitant. What if it didn't work out? What if he failed? One evening, after a long day of work, Eli sat at his kitchen table, staring at the half-finished table in front of him. It was a project he had started with enthusiasm, but now it felt like just another piece of furniture. A small voice inside him whispered that he was capable of more, but he silenced it, convinced that his limitations were too great to overcome. It wasn't until he overheard a conversation in town the next day that the world around him began to shift. A former mentor of his, a man who had once been a successful artist, was coming back to the town to offer a workshop. He would teach people how to take creative risks and embrace their passions. This news struck a chord with Eli. He had always admired the mentor's work, but he had never considered the possibility of being like him. The idea of exploring his creative side again was terrifying, but also exhilarating. For the first time in a long time, Eli felt the stirrings of excitement deep inside. This could be the moment that changed everything, the spark that would reignite his dreams. But it also required him to step out of his comfort zone, a step he wasn't sure he was ready to take. Eli stood at the edge of the workshop, his hands nervously twitching as he watched the crowd gather for the workshop. His mentor, a man named Arthur, had always been a beacon of creativity and innovation, someone who had inspired many to chase their dreams. Yet, Eli couldn't shake the doubt that still lingered in his chest. He had spent so many years playing it safe, sticking to what he knew. Now, in the face of a challenge that required him to push beyond his limitations, fear clung to him like a heavy cloak. As Arthur began his session, Eli found himself entranced by the stories of daring artists and creators who had embraced their passions and turned them into successes. Yet, as the workshop progressed, Eli couldn't help but feel small. He compared himself to others in the room, who seemed confident and eager to try new things. Their ideas flowed freely, while Eli felt like an imposter, unsure of where to begin, or even if he had anything valuable to offer. Every time he thought about raising his hand to speak or share, a voice in his head reminded him of all the reasons why he shouldn't. During a break, Eli stepped outside, needing some space to clear his mind. He walked along the village streets, his feet dragging as he thought about the opportunities slipping away. But just as he was about to return to his workshop, something shifted. He stopped in front of the small bakery in town, where an old woman, known for her kindness and quiet strength, was placing a fresh loaf of bread on the windowsill. It was a simple act, but there was something so genuine about it. She had found joy in something small, something she had mastered over the years. That moment clicked in Eli's mind. It wasn't about being perfect or waiting for the right moment. It was about taking the first step, even if it felt uncertain. The lesson was clear. Sometimes, the smallest act of courage could unlock something greater. As Eli returned to the workshop, he realized that he needed to stop waiting for perfection and instead embrace the imperfect journey that lay ahead. He wasn't just a carpenter. He was someone capable of creating, learning, and growing just like the people he admired. And with that, he decided to dive into the unknown, ready to face the challenges ahead with a new sense of purpose. As Eli continued his journey in the workshop, a transformation began to unfold. At first, it was small, little moments of courage that built upon one another. He started trying new techniques, taking risks with designs that he would have previously dismissed as too bold or unconventional. The more he practiced, the more his confidence grew. His work began to change, becoming not only more intricate, but also more meaningful. What had once been a simple routine of creating furniture for the townsfolk had now turned into an act of self-expression. The pieces he crafted weren't just for function, they carried a part of him, a piece of his soul. But it wasn't easy. Doubts continued to surface, and at times, Eli questioned whether he was truly capable of pursuing this path. There were moments when the fear of failure seemed overwhelming, and his old habits of retreating into safety whispered in his ear. But through it all, Eli had come to realize something profound. The key wasn't in perfection, but in persistence. Every mistake was a lesson, every misstep an opportunity to grow. And it was through these failures that he began to discover his true strength. One day, after weeks of hard work, Eli presented his first public piece, a beautifully intricate wooden table adorned with carvings of nature's beauty, a reflection of his newfound passion. As he placed it in the village square, the reaction was overwhelming. People gathered around, admiring the craftsmanship and the emotion that the piece seemed to carry. For the first time, Eli saw himself through the eyes of others, and what he saw was not failure, but the quiet strength he had cultivated. In that moment, the realization hit him. His true strength had always been there, quietly simmering beneath the surface. It had never been about making a perfect product. It had always been about trusting himself, embracing vulnerability, and persevering through challenges. Eli had found his purpose, and it wasn't just about what he created. It was about the courage to keep going, no matter how uncertain the path ahead seemed. Now, more confident than ever, Eli stood in front of his creation, finally seeing himself for who he truly was. The silent strength he had carried all along was no longer hidden. It was his time to shine. Months passed, and Eli's reputation began to grow beyond the small town. Word of his beautifully crafted pieces spread, and soon, he was receiving commissions from nearby villages and even larger cities. But despite his newfound success, Eli remained grounded. His journey had taught him that true success wasn't measured by the number of orders he received, but by the impact he had on others and the growth he experienced within himself. He had learned that real strength wasn't in perfection, but in the courage to continue even when the path wasn't clear. One evening, as Eli stood in his workshop, now filled with the warmth of his efforts and the joy of his accomplishments, he reflected on how far he had come. He thought back to the days when he doubted himself, when fear held him back from pursuing his dreams. That man seemed like someone else, someone he didn't even recognize anymore. The Eli who had once been paralyzed by uncertainty had now transformed into someone who saw challenges as opportunities and embraced the journey, no matter how uncertain. It wasn't just the physical work he had done that had changed. Eli had evolved emotionally, spiritually, and mentally. He no longer saw his challenges as barriers, but as stepping stones on the way to a greater understanding of himself and the world. The power of resilience and the courage to face adversity had reshaped him, turning his silent strength into a loud declaration of who he was and what he was capable of. Eli's success wasn't just about the recognition he received or the pieces he created. It was about the legacy he left behind. He inspired others to believe in themselves, to face their fears, and to take the first step, no matter how small, toward their own dreams. The true measure of his strength lay in the way he had inspired change not only in his own life, but in the lives of others. As the years passed, Eli continued to create, teach, and inspire. His journey had come full circle, and he had found peace in knowing that his quiet strength was enough. It was more than enough, it was everything. The story of his journey became a beacon for others, showing them that even in silence, strength could be loud, and even in doubt, greatness could emerge. And as he looked out at the work he had accomplished, Eli smiled, knowing that his story had just begun.